Good afternoon, everyone, or good afternoon from the eastern seaboard of Australia. My name is Eugene. I'm the Business Development Manager for SoupMate. And joining me today is the amazing Reese Hopper, Manager of Product Design, as usual. Just a few things to get out the way before we get started. I think it's going to be quite a good update today. If you have any questions, as you heard the video, please drop them into the question box. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible. If we don't, we will follow up with an email response. So yes, it's just myself and Reese joining you today. Reese, I'm going to flick over to you just to take us through the agenda before we have our first poll.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eugene. Today's webinar is all about automation and items that we've released in the May 2026 release. So we're talking automation through query templates, a few workflow updates, letter, new letter signing blocks, and then some other helpful items for that came out during the May 26 releases.
Fantastic. Sounds good. I think we'll head on into the content today. So Reese, over to you.
Thanks, Eugene. As mentioned before, I'll be covering off the some automation that we've brought out, query templates, workflows, signing letters, and some helpful items in the May 26 releases. We did do 4 releases, which is 36 items, which is a bit lower than normal, but we do have a release in the barrel ready to go later this afternoon. The first item, query templates. With query templates, they've been around for a while, but what we've introduced is just being able to automate some other fields, so the high priority, the date, the reminders, and we've also brought in this new functionality concept about whether you can draft or send queries automatically. I'm just going to go to SuperMate and just show you exactly what I mean. So if I go to query and I go to templates, the pension minute one, which I've used in previous webinars, you can see that I can use letter tokens. I can name the template different to the subject of the query, and I can use tokens. I can now flag an item as high priority, set a due date, and with the due dates, we've added the ability. Need to select on specific date. If we do have the flexibility to go, okay, well, the due date will be, say if you have something that's due on when it was created, or lodgement due date, end of certain periods, or you can say days before, after. So if I said this is due 14 days after I created the query, you also have the other. You also have the ability to go, okay, well, this is due 14 days before the lodgement due date. So say if you had a query to sign some documents, you say, well, this is due 2 weeks before the due date, so you have enough time to review the signatures and lodge the return. The first reminder, so once again, you can set when the first reminder will occur. So for this one, I've said 2 weeks after I've created the query, and then set it weekly. The messages have the message that gets sent. Once again, you can put letter tokens in there, and they will replace with actual data from the fund. So it stops having to have templates and then updating it based on the various scenarios. And then there's this last option here. I'll talk about it further in this webinar, but it's more about, do I want, with workflows, creating queries automatically, do I want this query to be automatically sent straight away, so sent immediately, or should it be saved as a draft and then someone manually review the query and send it? Now, with the query templates, it's not just workflows where you can get that automation if you do want to just set up the query templates with those fields set. If I jump into, let's jump into this fund. And go to the query section. This also works with manually creating queries. So I can go through and say, well, I want this template. I want it for this member. If it's a template that's got a pension entity, or if it's for the fund, it'll just go, okay, well, 2025 year. And you can see it automatically in the message. It automatically replaced the letter tokens for with the actual data. So if I switch back here and go back to Jack, you can see that it goes pension minutes for Mr. Jack Webb, and it's identified when the pension commenced. It's also defaulted in the due date, the first reminder, and weekly, and that just helps with your staff not having to remember, okay, with this type of query, this is when I need to set the due date, or these types of queries, I'll set an earlier reminder and a more frequent reminder. So for example, if it was a payment of a activity statement or a ASIC invoice, you may want to set the reminder to be 3 or 4 days after the query is sent, and then weekly reminders. Or if it's an end of financial year query, you could set the first reminder to say 2-3 weeks away and have fortnightly reminders, because it's not such an urgent query. The next item I want to chat about is the automatically sending queries with documents. So we've brought in a new workflow process step, and I am showing the workflow builder. I don't normally like lifting up the hood and showing, but I think it's going to be really helpful in this webinar to do this, because you'll be able to see the power of workflows when I run one. So this is a process step. Current users will be aware of this workflow builder step, where you could run reports automatically, run letters, run doors, run trial closes, do a lot of processes automatically. We've brought in the ability to create a query automatically. When you are creating the query and you do select the parameters field, the parameters that you can put in is the query template. So I think it's probably late last year, I was showing off doing a workflow with whole heap automation, where I went through different steps and the benefits of workflows, and I created a pension establishment minute, and then I raised the query manually. This step replaces the whole creating the query manually. So it will create the query with that pension minute template that I was just showing off just before, and then it'll grab attachments that were generated during that workflow. With attachments to the workflows, you do need to make sure that the step that generated that letter or report suite, you do need to make sure that they are in the same workflow. So you can't have the letter being generated in a parent workflow and then the query created in a sub workflow. They both those workflow steps need to be in the same workflow for this to work. I'll show it off later, but you can attach multiple attachments to a query. So if you have multiple steps in a workflow, you just need to enter the workflow step into the attachments field, followed by a comma, followed by the next workflow step that generates the other letter or report. The attachments is optional, so you don't need to fill this one out, but the query template does need, obviously, if you're creating a query with this process step, you do need to fill out the query template. This is basically what it looks like when you do run it in Supermate, where on the left is the pension minute being created, and then on the right there, this is the query successfully being created. Once you have automatically sent a query, they can be identified by the system badge, and it tells you which workflow step did create it. So you can tell whether I created it manually or it's been created automatically by a workflow, and then attach my name to it. Now with the query owner name, that name will automatically get attached based on whose name is against the workflow step. So if I create a workflow step and the owner of the query creation step was previous, and I completed the previous step, it will have my name on it. But if I say, okay, the query owner for the query being created is the CSM, then it'll look at the CSM on that fund. So for example, if Andy's the CSM on the fund, it will attach Andy's name to that query. But you'd be able to see that it was system generated. With the queries, I did mention before when I was showing off the template, you do have the draft or automatic sent immediately or by draft. And the big difference there is obviously, if when that process step creates a query, it'll either create as draft and then someone has to go through and send it, or it gets sent immediately. And my recommendation is when you are starting out using this, getting familiar with it, you can set it to draft. Do the workflow a few times, have a look at the outcome. Once you're comfortable, change it to send immediately, and then that query will just get sent immediately, and the person won't have to review that query and send it. Yeah, the draft option is also there if the type of query could be a bit sensitive of nature, or you want to 100% ensure that the query is accurate. You can set it to draft, and then the query will be there to review. Now, if the query is set up correctly and the workflow is set up correctly and the tokens are all accurate and how you want them to be, then there shouldn't be a requirement to check it, but that option is available. It will also get sent as a draft if the system default for query workflow auto send is disabled is set to yes. I'll just navigate back to Supermate to show you where that option is and what a automatically sent query looks like. So under settings, system defaults, if I type in disabled, mine's set to no. So if any query created by a workflow will be saved as draft and will not be sent automatically if it's set to yes. So obviously mine's set to no. My workflows will send queries automatically. If I change that to yes, all queries, even if the template says to send it immediately, will set it to draft. And we've put this in just as a bit of a kill switch. So say if you are using workflows, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I've set up this query template incorrectly. I need to stop people sending queries automatically until I fix this query template. You can either set that template to draft, but if there is multiple query templates that you do need to fix, you can just quickly jump in here, set this to yes, and then all queries will be drafted, not sent automatically. Gives you the chance to update those query templates and then switch this back to yes. And that way you don't have to play around with the query template settings individually. Let's see if I can track down a query that I've sent automatically through a workflow. All right, so I've got two here. One is pension minimums required for 26. I've put a high priority on it. This one is the pension minutes that I was talking about, and you can see here where it's system generated. You can see the workflow step. You can see the linked workflow. This one doesn't because I have deleted the workflow. So therefore the linked workflow does disappear. If I go view query, I can also see here that here's the workflow step that generated it. Priority's high, next reminders. The query was raised, token's been swapped out with actual figures, and then I've attached two documents to that query automatically. We've also brought in some workflow tokens. So how workflow tokens work is you can put a decision step in. We have manual decisions where you can ask the user a question which you want to be answered manually or the system wouldn't be able to figure out. So for example, you could have a question about does this person want that, does this person live nearby and want to come in for a meeting? Yes, no. Just ones where the system obviously wouldn't know the answer to. But then you could also set up advanced decisions where the workflow answers itself. For example, the one up here, it's bank account third party authority. So you could set it up to say, for this fund, check the bank account authority on a bank account. So it checks across all bank accounts and it'll pick up the highest hierarchy or the highest payment authority. And if it has, okay, yeah, we do payments for this fund, you can send it to a set of steps to go, okay, facilitate payments, make sure the payment's made. If the payment authority on the bank accounts are all general in nature or no payment authority, it'll send you down workflow steps to contact the client to make the payment themselves. And that's where you could use that automatic queries for. You can go, okay, well, I'll send it down the payment route. I'll organize the payment, or I'll raise the query to get the client to do it. We've also brought in a few workflow tokens about checking with ABNs are recorded, TFNs are recorded, corporate trustee ACN has been put in, or whether or not the fund has an advisor. So depending on whether the trustee or the advisor owns the relationship, does impact the way, well, obviously you guys know, it does impact the way that you do communicate or require actions to be performed. So you can set up to go, okay, well, and you'll see in the workflow where I've set up to go, okay, well, does this fund have an advisor? Yep. Okay, go down and talk to the advisor about the situation. No. All right, we'll go on and continue on the workflow in respect to contacting the trustee. If you haven't checked out the workflow tokens that we do have, it is quite diverse. You can see here on the right, I have the one that I'm putting in is relating to whether the fund has pensions, but you also have platform assets, commercial, residential. So you have different workflows and checks for end of year, depending on whether the fund has a commercial property or residential property, or if it doesn't have a property at all, it'll just skip those steps. Checking when the last deed date. So say if you create a workflow to do deed amendments process amongst all your funds, you can set it up and it could check, okay, well, yeah, this deed is less than a couple of years old. I'm not going to initiate a deed amendment conversation with these people. We've also brought in an expression-based iteration workflow step. So iteration workflow steps are where you have a sub workflow and you can repeat that workflow step as many times as the iteration details tells you to do it. Prior to this month's releases, we had min max. So you could say, okay, I want this workflow to run for a minimum of 3 times. So say if you have a workflow, sub workflow that you want to run 3 times to make sure that something happens, you could say, yep, it's on a min max, a minimum 3 times. So they have to do that workflow 3 times to make sure it's been done. Or you could do it on a maximum basis where you could go, okay, well, I only want my staff to complete this process twice. If they haven't completed it within 2 sub workflow iterations, then I want them to move on to some other steps and solve it in a different way. Entity-based ones, this one's really helpful where with entity-based, it's active members, active pensions. I believe there's a third one there. I think it's accumulation accounts. And where you could use this one is you go entity-based is pension. And then the workflow step will get created for every pension member within that fund. So say you have 4 pension accounts, so 2 individuals, but 4 pension accounts, that sub workflow will be created for every pension. So then you can, in that sub workflow, you could put in steps to go, okay, well, check the minimums and make sure that this pension is compliant this year. Another way I've seen it is insurance checks or making sure that external TSB values have been entered. So you could use the entity based equals member, and then you get a sub workflow for every member, so every individual that exists in the fund, for you to go, okay, I'll check to see if this person's insurance details are up to date. Complete that sub workflow, you move on to the next member to check their insurance details and move on to the last member, or entering the Excel TSB, similar concept. You get three workflows if you have 3 members, workflow for each member. Now, what we brought in was an expression-based one, and where this one is helpful is that if you want a sub workflow to occur based on the workflow token or the expression passing. So you can see here on this one here, I've got fund has open queries equals yes. This sub workflow will occur if the fund has open queries. And I've set it as a max of 3 times. So after in that sub workflow, I could have steps in to follow up the client or review details, put a delay step in, so wait for 7 days. Then when that workflow gets triggered again, it'll check, okay, are there still open queries? Yep, it is. Redo the workflow. If there are no open queries, it just moves on to the rest of the workflow. And then with the max 3 times, you can set it so, say in this situation with queries, you could go, okay, well, I want this process to happen 3 times, and I want all the steps within that sub workflow to be allocated to the CSM. Then the CSM will get the sub workflow to follow up the client. But after 3 times, if those queries are still outstanding, I can have a step for the leader or the another role type, relationship type, to then escalate the situation to. So say if the team leader then reviews the situation, contacts the client themselves. So we do have those expression-based iterations now that you can use. What I'll do is I'll show you Supermate and I'll run workflow with all these new enhancements in. So once again, I don't like lifting the hood too much in these webinars, but it's very helpful to expose how powerful Supermate's workflows are. So you can see here, I've got this workflow. This is the workflow designer. You can see here, I've got a workflow which I'm going to create for a fund called pension minimum notifications for due. And it's going to go through and go, does this fund have a, sorry. Oh yeah, does this fund have a pension? Yep. If it does, it checks for an advisor. No, it goes to the join. So you can see the path it'll follow is, okay, check to see if it's a pension. If it does, continue. If it doesn't, go down to the join and then close the workflow. If as an advisor, it can go down here to the advisor contact sub workflow, where we can deal with this situation differently with the advisor. But if there is no advisor, we can run, I should have named these steps more appropriately, but the run a door test, this one is running whether the pension minimums are met. If it passes, the workflow closes. If it doesn't, I'm running another door to check whether it's going to check to see if anyone has any paid more than their minimums. So we have the opportunity to check the pension allocations between the members and smooth the pension payments between the different members. Where I've led it to a function step where it can take the users to the pension screen, where you can see here function a pension review. So that step will give them instructions to go, hey, someone's paid more than the minimum. Why don't you check to see if you can take some of the money off a pension account and smooth it to another member so they meet the minimums for the year? Then once they've done that, do the test again, pass, complete. Then this is the generating the report automatically, generating the letter, generating the query. If any of those steps fail, it'll come down to a step to raise that query manually. Though that's more of just a safety step. So I don't envision that to be needed, but it's there to do it. Then once I generate the query, do a 1 week pause, come down here to check to see if the query's been responded to. It creates that iteration where it checks, okay, is there any open queries? Yep, go check. And if I view this sub workflow, what you'll see is I go, okay, well, yes, there's queries open, but have they met the minimum yet? Yeah, they have. I take them to a step to go, okay, well, everyone's met their minimum, so I can just close the query. Or if they haven't, follow up the client, wait 7 days, complete that sub workflow. And then every 7 days, this iteration will run maximum of 3 times. And I didn't add the steps here, but then I can just put in a check to see if minimums have been met. If they have, I can continue on the workflow. Otherwise, I can push them to steps for an escalation point Obviously, very important for pension minimums to be met, so we can send it to an escalation point to make sure that the minimum requirements have been met. So that's under the hood. That is the power of the workflow, and I just want to show you it running in real time. So I'm not sure, because it does look powerful, but also I do identify it does look a bit complex. But the outcome that your staff will experience is quite simple. So for this one here, for the future super fund, I am going to kick off this workflow as of today. I'm going to kick that workflow off. You can see here, it's running some door tests, but if I view the workflow, it checked to see if the pension existed. It checked if there was an advisor, there wasn't, so then it ran the door tests. It generated the minutes. It's gone down to a wait a week delay step. So if you can see here, it goes wait a week. It's going to delay. I'm going to select complete because I want to move to the next step. I'll select the screen, which takes me to the query screen, so I can double check. You can see here, yep, that's the query that was created. That's the step. What letter did it create? I can't move up PDF. So created this pension letter where I've gone. So in the query itself, all I had was, okay, there's nothing paid. The amount for the fund is 93,000. I've attached a letter, so from an individual perspective, they can have a look and go, okay, well, Jack and Jeff hasn't paid anything. But say if they have, you can see which ones have paid and what their minimum requirements are. You can create another column that could automatically identify the shortfall if you did want to. So you got the letter, or if they wanted to look at it from a individual, say if there was multiple, if members had multiple pension accounts, you'd be able to have a look at the pension monitor report and see it based on a individual or a per pension basis, which is helpful. Okay, so that is one successfully going through and creating the query. And you saw in real time, it just went straight through, matter of seconds, it got to the query. Obviously, if you launch this, and you do have the ability to launch these workflows on multiple funds at once. So you could just go, okay, for all my funds, generate, do this workflow. There's not someone that's sitting around waiting for these workflows to complete. The first time someone will be aware of this workflow needs something is once that delay step, so set from 7 days from now, once that delay step has expired, they'll get a notification to go, hey, you got this step to follow up a client on. So yeah, launching it for a couple hundred funds, users won't have to do anything for a workflow unless there's a step saying, hey, you need to intervene in this situation, follow up the client. Yeah, so for this workflow, it's mainly following up a client. If I switch to the Pollock Super Fund, to the workflow section, I go all teams, search, no workflows in progress. But if I go to completed, it jumped down to this one. If I view it, you can see it goes, does a pension exist? It's gone no, and it's ended. So if I jump in here, look at the pensions, everyone's got accumulation accounts, no pensions here. On the a different version of my future fund, which I use to demo off advisor functionality. If I jump into the workflow, search, you can see there's a step here for Andy as the CSM to discuss the pension minimum issues with the advisor. And you can see it goes, yep, they do have a pension, but they also have an advisor. Go do the advisor contact sub workflow and have a discussion with the advisor. I could search through this and go, okay, well, these are all the funds where I need to have that conversation with the advisor about funds not meeting their minimums. So Andy only has one here that he has to talk to the advisor about. So yeah, a quick way, group multiple, well, one conversation about multiple funds into one phone call, then go and complete those steps. Post the conversation. Going back to other enhancements that we've done, so workflows, you can now attach multiple documents to a workflow. You can attach documents to existing workflows, and you can unlink documents from workflow. So multiple documents to a workflow. How that could be helpful is, say, you do have a payment workflow or a property settlement workflow, and obviously property settlements, you have multiple documents. You have the contract, settlement statement, lawyer trust, ledger, any other invoice or document relating to the settlement of a property. You can attach all those documents to a workflow. So when they're working through that workflow, they have access to all the different documents to help them do all the work. We've also given the ability to attach documents to existing workflows. Previously, you could only attach a document to a workflow when creating the workflow, but the feedback we got was, hey, I've got this workflow where I request a document, they provide the document, therefore I want to attach that document to the workflow so the other staff that receive that next workflow step can see that document attached to the workflow without having to go searching through the document screen, and also being able to unlink documents from workflows. Jumping back into Supermate, I will open up, which fund am I using for this? Yep. Future 26R. You can see here I have my quarterly review workflow. If I select view documents, I can go next. I've got the market value report. I have a rates notice and a water notice. So, they could require processing or payment or anything. Multiple documents attached to this workflow. I can select unlink from the workflow if I want. So that document no longer is linked to that workflow. But also in the document section, I'm going to open this one up even though it's already attached to the workflow. If I select edit, you can see here I can start a new workflow. And the benefit of this is, say with this workflow, this document, it's already attached to a workflow. Then during that workflow, I might know to go, oh, actually, I have to make payment of this water bill. I will go back to the indexing screen and I can select, start a new workflow to trigger off a payment workflow from happening. Or I can select here and attach it to another workflow, or unlink it from a workflow. So quite helpful in that aspect. The workflows, my team's workflows tasks. So you do, with tasks and workflows, you do have that option to go, whether it's mine, my team, or all teams. So you can see what task allocated to yourself or what's allocated to the team. we've put an enhancement in to go if there are any workflow steps that the owner is a team. You can see here all these tasks here, task names related to this workflow. They're all sitting in Melbourne's queue to pick up. I belong to Melbourne's team. When I go look at what tasks I need to do, I can go, okay, yep, that bottom quarterly review one, I'll pick that one up. All right, there's a whole heap sitting there in a queue. I can either navigate to the queue tab to pick it up, or I can just grab that task and do it. Similar, when you do open a a task, when you open up a task and you want to reallocate it to yourself, you can go, now you can open up the task, and from that task itself, you can say, I want to change the task owner to myself. It's all the related tasks will get allocated to me, or I can allocate it to someone else, or I can allocate it based on a role that's on a fund. So say if you have a workflow step and so you don't have to navigate to the relationships tab to see who the CSM is. On the drop down, you can select a drop down. It'll say, here's the CSM. Select the CSM, and then that task will get allocated to the CSM. Now that we've finished talking about workflows, a couple other cool things that we've released in this in this month. Signing block tokens. Originally, when we created the trustee signatures block, it would create for each trustee, it would list them down the page. And we've created this new letter token, because realistically, when you do produce minutes, I've noticed, and I used to do it back when I was an administrator, you would have trustees, multiple trustees signing on a line, just because it looks a lot better. So we've brought into this letter, I brought out a letter token code where you could say, this is column 1. I want trustee 1 to be in this column, trustee 2 in this column. And what it'll do is it'll look at how many trustees there are. So say if there was one trustee, you would only get, say if Jack was the only trustee, you would only get a signing section just for Jack. If you had 2, so Jack and Kylie, you'd get 2, 3, you would receive 3. Bringing up this was how the letter template would look, where I have a table here where I've gone, this is column 1, this is column 2, put it inside a table, and the output will be bang. So this is what the output would look like, where all the tokens are replaced with fund data, added the auditor in, and then it's automatically added the trustees, left 2 columns, left, right, looks a lot better. The next item, the other signing block token we've brought out is a signing block for member signature. And we've brought this one out so it will create a signing block for any letter or minute or resolution where a member needs to sign. So, for example, a minute or a letter requesting from the trustee to be able to do something, and the member has to sign, you can put the member signature block there. This one will become very helpful in a few months' time when we bring out electronic signing functionality, and that'll pick up the member signature block to put signing tags in. Another item we've brought out in the May 26 release is to do with reports. 2 reports. Contribution tax has been relabeled to member tax on the consolidated member statement report. The label change is something we've done for a while on member account balance report, and we just noticed recently that we never did it on the consolidated member statement report. And we had a lot of requests to go, hey, this employer, this member received, say, 30,000 employer concessional contributions, but the member tax field, when it was called contribution tax, it did not reflect the 15%. And that's because the field actually provides what the tax the member's liable for. And obviously, if the member has member specific expenses, that impacts the tax that they're liable for. So insurance premiums, 15% of the insurance premiums, if it's fully deductible, would impact the figure that shows there. And so it said contribution tax, but it wasn't exactly contribution tax. We've updated to be more accurate to be member tax. The other item is a SuperStream contribution report. You can set up report suites for a member level. And so it could be, for example, a minute to say, hey, this is the contributions we received based on your fund. Could be a minute, and then you put supporting documentation, the SuperStream contribution report, or the members contribution report. And going forward, if you do a report suite for a member, it will only include the SuperStream contributions that relate to that particular member. Market value validation, we've got a lot of feedback or requests for a validation to be put into the system. It seems that there are some people out there that were, say, they received a statement, end of month statement for using this one example, the fund held 1,150 units. They looked at the market value, went, oh, the market value is 170,000 because that was the total market value. And then they would put it into the fund unit price field for some reason. And so we've put a warning in to go, hey, we actually think you're making a mistake here because the market value, which is listed under the field, over 100 million, we can obviously pick up that that's incorrect. So we've put that in as a bit of a safety measure to say, hey, you might want to double check the fund unit price that you're entering. With conditions release, previously we didn't have reached age 65 as a condition release because we were working under the scenario where if someone is 65, their conditional release is also when they reach 65, all their benefits come unrestricted, non-preserved. Therefore, the conditional release was like, hey, I'm signing a pension with unrestricted, non-preserved. But we've received a request to put in reach age 65 in there. Now, when starting a pension, if the person is under 65, it'll default to a different conditional release based on other circumstances. If they are over 65, it'll automatically default to they reach the age 65. And also the updating of the lodgement due date. So in the end of year screen and the financial year screen, we have updated. We've allowed people to put in when the financial year does require lodging. So if I switch over here, jump into the end of year screen to 2025. Oh, probably should do it for this one. Yep, this one here. So this one here is sitting at tax return signing. If I say it's completed, I can put in the date it was lodged right on lodgement due date, or I can navigate to the financial year information screen, and for that year, I can select edit, and I can update the date lodged or the due date. So I've got that ability there where I can update those fields. Now that's the that's this webinar today. I went through the different automation that we've included, the query templates, so you can raise it manually, the automatically sending of queries. I should mention right now, with those workflows, if you don't use client view to raise your queries, you can still use all that automation that I was showing off, but instead of having a process step that creates the query automatically, you could just have a function step to go to take you to the My Job screen to grab the reports and the letters, to send the queries manually through email. So you can set up letter templates to go, this is an email template, and have the workflow generate that automatically for you. We also have, I went through all the different workflow tokens, so the decision trees that happen automatically, the new expression-based iteration workflow step, and all the other different items that we have released in the last month. I'm going to throw it back to you now, Eugene, and have a drink of water, wet this throat.
That was very, very extensive. Thank you, mate. Let me just share my screen. Make sure it's all right. Good. All right, fantastic. Thank you. It really pretty much brings us to the end of the webinar. Just a reminder that you can find help through our help portal. You can just click on the little question mark icon at the top of the top right of your screen, and that'll bring up the help portal. Also, if you're not using SuperMate for web, what is wrong with you? That's insane. Get onto it. It's only $132 per year, excluding GST. For an additional $475, you get access to all of the bank feeds that we have. We also do offer on-demand learning. You can get CPD points and accreditation. If you are interested in that, just reach out to us and we will put you in touch with Craig, who can help you out with some of our online training. Doesn't look like there's been any questions, so we might just pull it up over there. I know it's been a really busy and crazy month for all of you. Really appreciate you joining us today. If you do have any questions that you think of afterwards, you can just email me, eugene.skiepers@superconcepts.com.au. Thanks, Reese. That was a good one. We will catch up again next month.
Thanks, Eugene.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Bye-bye.